Thursday night, maybe, or
I did. I did. That's why I'm like trying to think of where I would have seen that. But yeah. Thursday night. It was here. Yeah.
We're gonna blast off up there.
No, I sure didn't.
Workshop.
Lamar Pass.
I'm right here.
Where did that chocolate come from?
Hagerstown, Maryland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got it right here. I was like, oh, you're right, absolutely. And they did.
You guys read that book about the Charles Newcomb portraits or murals? I have the book, I haven't read it.
It's worth reading. I'm in the middle of it. So it's kept my interest. And I'm sick of mine.
So this is part of the plan report.
He's not good.
I see.
Veterans Park, Potter Park. He says it's good, that everybody gets to the whole thing is, right now, there's pretty good. Correct, that's our detour. That's why I was wondering.
We'll call the meeting to order. Would all please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody had a chance to review the minutes for the June 1st council meeting and the June 27th public hearing. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the June 1st council meeting and June 27th public hearing meeting minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Moving to public comments. First, we have Michelle Huntington about Jubilee Days. Ma'am?
Well, we had a wonderful Jubilee Days despite the rain Saturday morning. The parade went off without a hitch. I was excited to still see so many show up and be in the parade and the patrons coming to see it. Friday night was extraordinary. We brought in, well, we didn't, let's see, Optimist Club Hagerstown, Lions Club Economy come together and brought the fish chicken fry, which brought in a tremendous amount of people. We brought in a cruise in last minute. That coming to be 33, 35 cars maybe. Raised money for Blakely. Everybody knows Blakely. So we brought in about $400 for Blakely that night. Vendors, food and craft vendors were very pleased with the weekend. They all said they did well despite the rain. Some of them didn't show back up Saturday morning because of the rain. But it all went very, very well. I know next year they plan on having another fish chicken fry, so that's great. We will be bringing back the cruise in. We will probably have to find more streets for vendors because we about capped out all the way down Perry Street where we're going. And it just keeps growing.
Comments, questions?
I'd like to thank Donnie for being in the parade. Chris was in the parade. Driving the Grand Marshal, that was great. It was just a lot of fun. Chris, he was a vendor, so everybody gets involved. It's fun.
The fish and chicken was delicious. It was really good.
It was, and I loved seeing everybody up here just commingling, talking, sitting on the benches, sitting in the gazebo, eating. They just really all got out and mingled.
And Friday evening, the vendor market on Perry Street was packed.
Yeah,
I think Friday was almost better than Saturday.
well, they did very well for a Friday night, and usually Friday's kind of slow, but with everything else that was brought in, it really helped. So I have vendors that have said, please put me down where I was this year for next year. So a lot of them plan on returning.
And thank you for your hard work.
But it's a group of us, we enjoy it.
Thank you. Next, we have Doug Sanders regarding the new Ralph Peterbilt. Sir?
Thank you for having me on your agenda, and I thank the town manager as well. As a way of introduction, I graduated here in 1973, and I moved to Florida. 53 years go by, and I realized something happened in my hometown. I'm not sure everybody's aware of it. All the cars and vehicles going by, so I met with Chris a couple years ago, made several trips through your museum, which is priceless. And the answer is in your museum. And my book is about Ralph and all the men and women who made the cruise control. And the women, the cruise control was made by them on South Washington Street. And you each have a copy of my book. When you go into it, it's loaded with Hagerstown names. And part of the emphasis of my book is the town was very excited in 2022 when you were in the national headlines. But you were in the headlines in 1955, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. But if I can indulge the council, I've got a brief PowerPoint, and I'd be willing to email it to you, Chris, and put it on this town's historical records. But I was, pardon the informality, but I'm going to sit down and talk about a town that changed drastically in the last 53 years. First hint that Hagerstown is special showed up in Ripley's Believe It or Not column. And the New York newspapers ate it up alive. Who is this blind person in Hagerstown, Indiana? Town of 2,000 people. And as I said, I graduated in '73, but during the last 53 years, the town's profile started to change, especially in 2022. I had family and friends. I could not be here that year. My family and friends, thanks to Facebook, allowed me to see how the town enjoyed their moment in the spotlight. My brother sent some video clips. You had a nice gathering at the park. The team meets with the governor. But I wanted to talk about a young man that was blinded when he was 5 years old. And if you could close your eyes and imagine the next 90 years, you don't see anything. You don't see the Hagerstown area. You don't see the factory your family founded. You don't see your wife. You don't see your daughter. And you don't see the cruise control, which is up in the museum. It's about this big. And today, it's so microscopic you can't even find it in the circuitry of your car. But at a young age, Ralph invented a bulky car that when it went down the hill, it could be about 25 miles per hour. It was so loud, the town asked him, don't run it at night and scare the horses. On the second floor of the museum, Ralph's class, the class of 1908, had 9 students. And the museum has a replica of the electric lights that he put up which apparently was the first lighting in the town's history. And Ralph's family impacted this community so much that they built this humongous post office for $80,000 just to handle the volume from Perfect Circle. Many businesses were affected by the Teeters, including Guy Wolver and his fabulous smorgasbord. And my research began in Indianapolis with Ralph's grandson, and he was very cordial. And he said, here's what you need to look at. I'm in the basement of his house. Here's all these cabinets. I didn't know, where do I start? And he said, try this one. This file says cruise control and inventions. I had one afternoon to look at the history, so I tried to get as much as I could. I learned that the Teeters, during the Great Depression, when the town's application to the Carnegie Foundation fell through because he died, they stepped forward and built the library, still standing today. I looked at the sesquicentennial book. I went upstairs many times going through these files. What is here that can tell me more about Ralph Teeter? One of the things is he had 50 inventions. One of them was a pistol grip fishing pole. But the one that's on the back of my book is the actual patent that was filed on August 22nd, 1950. My research showed that Ralph had a major engineer, and there is a long list of Circle magazines that document the history of Hagerstown in the 1950s. One of the people I wanted to point out to is Bob Beeson, who is shown here doing photographs to illustrate speed control. He was a member of a 1930 photographic club in Hagerstown. I visited with Steve Beeson a couple of weeks ago. There are hundreds and hundreds of pictures of Hagerstown. One of them that caught my attention was this fire. The Hagerstown lumberyard caught on fire. The water tower for Perfect Circle was made out of wood. They had to stop the fire before the tower went, which endangered the factory. Obviously, they made it, and Ralph Teeter and his men continued to go forward. And I was always hopeful to get the names of the people who did this to come out. One of them was Earl Daggy Jr. and Jack Swoblin. And Evelyn Weaver, who visually inspected hundreds of speed controls on a 60-foot conveyor belt with dozens of components. And Patsy Davis, point setting, which I have no idea what that is. And then there is a thing called the electromechanical life testing machine. And apparently every other model was tested under extreme conditions to see if it was worthwhile. And on South Washington Street, nothing stands now, but there was a 60-foot assembly line. The speed control in this picture is on the upper left-hand corner. And 1 year after I graduated from high school in the spring of 1974, there was 4 models of the speed control shrinking in size. One of them, courtesy of Steve Beeson, was manufactured under Perfect Circle as a division of Dana Corporation. My brother has a copy of one that was made for Ford Motor Company. And by the 1970s, the smart college students, like my brother, figured out how to do speed control. But Ralph did it first, and he was blind. One of my classmates, Bobby Marie, his dad, Robert, is shown here working with a Studebaker automobile. He was a young technician. He lost his life during a motorcycle accident in 1969. But Marie gave me his dad's logbook, which is in the museum. They were instructed to take a car, go out west and come back. Go up the mountains, go through the cold, go through the hot. I'm not an engineer. I appreciate what was being documented, but I have no idea what was going on. But the bottom line is, they were satisfied that the thing would work. Another one of my classmates, his dad was Vern Vanderbilt, and his dad was a young associate professor on his way for a tenure track position at Purdue. And he's approached by Ralph Teeter about this contraption, and he gave up Purdue University, came to Hagerstown to follow a blind man to work on this contraption. Here he is working with some of the engineers. The Perfect Circle goes all out to bring the media to Hagerstown. At your airport, the Magic Carpet aircraft owned by Perfect Circle brought in reporters from Detroit and New York City at the company's expense. And I know you in the back can't see this, but in this picture, here's Ralph Teeter. Look at the expressions of the reporters. They're listening to a blind man explain something they don't know what it is. And then they were asked to step outside the factory. Here's all these cars equipped with cruise control. And they were instructed, drive to Newcastle, drive to Richmond, take your foot off the accelerator. Then they had a poolside reception out at Woodside over here. Then they went on the road with national exhibitions at Washington, D.C., also in Philadelphia, I believe. And this really caught my attention. A Shriners Convention out west had all these convertibles, 71 of them, every one of them with a cruise control. And if anybody in the room has not been to the museum, you have to see how big the original contraption was. And by 1980, Motorola had made a microprocessor less than an inch. And as I said earlier, today, you need a microscope to find it in the circuitry of your car. But surprisingly, Ralph's cousins didn't want to manufacture the cruise control in the beginning. So Ralph turned to a company in Anderson, the Pierce Governor Company, that did governing controls for military aircraft. At the time, they were the leader. But they dilly-dallied for over a year. Ralph got impatient. He took away the agreement. He went back to his cousins, and in 1957, they agreed to take the patent. They paid him $50,000. By the 1980s, late 70s, their various cars were shown what you see on the screen. And I remember before leaving Hagerstown, a test center that was set up in Richmond. At the time, it was state-of-the-art. All sorts of electronics and analysis could be done. It provided a lot of jobs. I don't know if it's still there. I've been to Richmond several times, but I haven't been able to look at that. But here are some interesting ads. This is in Hot Rod magazine in 1969. Someday, roads will tell cars where to go. I found this ad. You can sit in the back seat of your car, it will drive itself. And this is my favorite. In 1967, your car will fly. But reality hit. In 1958, Chrysler took the Teeters up and put it on the Chrysler Imperial. The Perfect Circle group spent lavishly $300,000 in advertising a year. They sponsored a radio program in Indianapolis. They sponsored the Charlie Davis Orchestra, which was the leading dance band in Indiana, trying to get the new generation to look at this. They now call it cruise control. And believe it or not, Perfect Circle had a band. I actually played in it in 1970, facing the courthouse. Phil Gates was the director. And last year, when I was up here, the Wicks invited me. They had their own museum in the old distribution center, and this is what I found. The singing secretaries. Every plant in Perfect Circle had singing secretaries. They were so popular, they were in the inauguration of Dwight Eisenhower, 1958. One of the gems in the museum is this big leather void called the Perfect Circle Company, factory photographs of Hagerstown, Newcastle, and Tipton. This is one of the main reasons why these books that I've handed out tonight is half photographs. They have been buried there for 70 years. Nobody sees them. And I tried to get that out with my book. The year my dad was born in 1927, Chester Sanders, this is what South Washington Street looked like. I dare anybody in the room to count all the OSHA violations in these pictures. I see belts, pulleys, big tunnels, and to top it off, a basement full of sand. As a non-engineer, I did not understand until later sand is used in the production of piston rings. Bulletin number 97, written by Lothar Teeter, is in the museum. It talks about, we want to pay our employees the highest wages in the country. 10 years later, Hagerstown is in the national news for the first time. The exponent covers it, but it's in the corner. Notice what really dominates the front page. It's sports. But the foundry in Newcastle, which is what it looked like back then, and what it looks like now, they had a tank in their parking lot. They also had a 50 caliber submachine gun. And you're wondering, well, what happened in 1955? It was an extremely bad strike, and UAW was trying to break the back of Perfect Circle, and they got mad and they sent 3,000 people to swarm that plant in Newcastle. Can you imagine 3,000 coming to Hagerstown? And my parents, youthful back then, they went around town filming a 8mm color film under martial law, and nobody said anything about it. And I've taken some screenshots from the movie. Everybody in town that came to town was stopped by the National Guard. And that included my mom's sister, who was coming up from Spencer with her husband. They wanted to hunt on our farm on Lamar Road. The guard took all their rifles and ammo and told them to go back to Spencer. Leave. So there's pictures of half tracks all over town, down on South Washington Street. Thanks to Google, I found Ralph Teeter in Life magazine. That the magazine went after him, an uncompromising, totally blind engineer. There's an emergency meeting in Newcastle. Can you imagine having an emergency meeting in 1955? The mayor of Newcastle is in the upper left-hand corner, and his staff is looking at him. What can we do? The people in the foundry locked themselves in, and there were shots fired. The guard would shoot, they would shoot. 6 people were shot. Fortunately, nobody was injured. So the governor is in Florida on vacation. The mayor says, I need some help. Life magazine is pounding that area, showing these pictures of the tranquility that I see here today that was not there in 1955. It was nasty. When I went to Ball State, I remember how tedious it was to take pictures, develop the film, develop the paper, develop the chemicals. So I scratched my head and I wondered, how did the pictures from inside the plant reach Life magazine in New York City? I have no answer. But Herman Teeter writes a plea of a beautiful poem in Hot Rod magazine. I won't read the whole thing, but it says, to hold my temper just one more day. So I think the Teeters did this to try to bring things under control, which they did. Ford Motor Company came on board. Perfect Circle sets up a plant in Laurinburg, North Carolina to handle aftermarket products. In the 1960s, every winner of the Indianapolis 500 had a piston ring. One of many pictures buried in the museum is Jack Dempsey, who was the Michael Jordan of 1921. He's a friend of Ralph Teeter. I could not figure out how that happened. He's a friend of Ralph Teeter. And the Exponent, the only time in its 100-year history, publishes an extra edition. Edwin V. O'Neill was the editor. He has an exclusive. Perfect Circle merges with Thompson Products. And he happened to live next door to the PC president. So, you know, small towns, there's no secrets. And he was right, but Congress didn't like it, the Federal Trade Commission, whatever, and they blocked the merger. They thought it was a monopoly. So in the early 60s, the exponent covers another merger. In the right-hand corner, Bayer and some other members were brought together in a very complicated stock option, and Perfect Circle becomes a wholly subsidiary of Dana. But the New York Times, the newspaper of record when I was in school as a journalism student, the New York Times on August 25, 1957 says, "New auto device controls speed. Automatic gadget designed by blind men to be put on some 1958 cars." That picture ends up in the exponent. Ralph Teeter is profiled by Edwin B. O'Neill. Ed takes the car. I don't know where he went, but he was absolutely astounded that he took his foot off the accelerator and the car maintained the speed. Now, I have a friendly disagreement with the Teeter family. We can prove that Ralph had a picture of Henry Ford. What we can't prove, did he talk to Henry Ford about the device? And I was able to prove he did talk to Henry Ford II. But he was extremely close with Ed Cole of General Motors. Ed Cole was an avid radio enthusiast. He built all sorts of radio contraptions. He helped turn around the Chevrolet division, and things were going well until the Corvair came out, and Ralph Nader torpedoed it, and it practically destroyed that division of General Motors. All the years I've lived in Hagerstown, this building out here always fascinated me. And the Hagerstown Exponent says it was built for $1 million. Circle Magazine shows a desolate area. I didn't see anything at Grayson Heights. I didn't see anything near the plant. It's totally open. This is what it looks like today. But one of the lasting legacies of Ralph Teeter is from the Society of Automotive Engineers. They do an annual Ralph R. Teeter Award. All these years later, 42 years after Mr. Teeter's death, for the bright and compromising and energetic engineers of today. I found out in 1977, Ralph donated $15,000 to build an astronomy observatory in Earlham College. I also found a dissertation at Ball State. One of the students did an analysis of all the Teeter homes in Hagerstown. And when I was visiting with Ralph, he showed me his dad's remote. It's as big as a shoebox. Now remember, he's blind, but he can find how to run the doorbell, ring the grandfather clock, pick in Whoa in Fort Wayne. All the radio stations are on this box. How'd he do it? The Charles Teeter estate is well documented at Ball State. And I saw the original drawings. I'm not an architect, but I can appreciate what Lothar Teeter was trying to do with his home as it appears today. Herman Teeter's home as it appears today. And Donald Teeter's home, which appears today. One of my classmates, Joel Conwell, sent me this picture. Again, Ralph Teeter is blind, but he's pinning a button on Gerald Conwell. And if somebody looks at this, they would think there's nothing special about it, but he's blind. And one of the things that I found admirable about Perfect Circle, they cared for their employees. I do not believe there were any financial institutions in Hagerstown in the early 1930s. But Perfect Circle set up a credit union, which is still standing today. They helped the Golay Center in Cambridge City. And your lights, they're beautiful. But guess what? The town liked the Teeter's electric plant when it was the light inspection company. So the Teeters sold it to the town for $3,500. And that set up the monthly billing. Every town resident paid $1 a month. And then Blair Hartley, he set up something that's still visible today. And in the early years of Perfect Circle, every factory member had free membership with that. So I've been by this numerous times. I always wanted to know who are the people behind what they were able to accomplish. I never got to meet Ralph's daughter, but she did a signing, a book signing in the mid-1990s. But I saw in the Exponent celebrating the 75th anniversary of Perfect Circle. And again, in the museum, there's a big register. The pages go back to 1939. 1939 pages, and we still have pages. In 2026, my name is added to it. And I appreciate you listening to me. I know I made your meeting longer, but for me, I had to move away from Hagerstown, let half a century go, and I realized there's only 3 Teeter books in the state library. 2 of them are from Teeter, 1 is from me. And I joined the Teeters in Syracuse earlier this week. And Jack Teeter and the family, they learned. I didn't think there would be anything I could uncover that they would not know. They learned about the people that made this machine. And so today, as I drive down Hagerstown, it's so quiet and peaceful. But in the 1950s, we were almost Detroit. We had the headlines, we had the newspaper clippings. So as council members, you've got to be pretty proud of this town. It's really amazing. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. For reference, where can the public gain access to your book? Is it for sale any?
On the books I gave you in the back, and I'll make sure Chris has it too. I'm at a very unique situation, digital versus printed. And the book can be offered for 80 cents. I'm trying to buck that trend. I'm trying to get younger generations to read the book. And there's no exponent. I don't know how to get the word out. So I thought the best way is to come to you as the council. You will take this book, you will read it, and hopefully you will tell your family and friends that they'll buy copies, and maybe I can come back and buy a farm, okay?
May I ask, do you have a copy for the library?
Yes.
There's 2.
Thank you. Moving on, we have Jacqueline Mullen from 98 South Perry.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I need to stand or?
You can speak to that, that's fine.
So we noticed that in front of our house on Perry Street that the curb from the alley to the corner of Perry and Walnut had been painted yellow, no parking. My family's lived on that corner for probably about 25 years, and I can't recall it ever not having cars parked there, especially when Weller's is open and everything's busy. So when I had a question about it and I came down to town hall, eventually I got a copy of this ordinance that states the west side of Perry Street, when signs are erected giving notice thereof, parking shall be limited to Sundays and each legal holiday as follows: New Year's Day, January 1st, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day. So on that, it just says the west side of Perry Street. It doesn't even say north, south, which block. So I kind of read it that really nobody should park on the west side of Perry Street at all, anywhere. But then it goes on to explain that the first block of South Perry Street, east side, 30 feet north of the alley. First block of Perry Street on the west side, 15 feet north of the alley, which would be in front of the old bakery. So my question is, should that section in front of 98 actually be yellow, or should all of it be yellow, the whole west side of North and South Perry? Because it doesn't really specify. And if so, it also says when signs are erected, so are we going to be getting signs that state no parking? The concern, like my husband and I have, is especially with the fact that the north of the alley has not been painted yet. They painted a good portion of all the curbs on South Perry Street, but that's where the semis come from auto car. So they kind of need that extra area to turn. I've seen big coach buses park right there. Cars line through there, which makes it difficult for the semis to turn. I feel like that's more of the problem area than in front of my house where people park and go to Welvers and Abbott's and things like that. So I just wanted clarification.
We appreciate you bringing this matter before us, and Chris, for clarification, obviously, with our summer help, that, we had them out painting the street corners and that, and following the guidelines is what our ordinance is set out with this.
Correct, yeah.
But obviously, this, with the discussions that we're already having with the railroad tracks and that, bringing in, probably a moment to look at this over and see what, if these conditions exist in other places in the community that might have problems.
Sure. Chris and I discussed this briefly a couple nights ago, and I think the main problem we have with South Perry Street is it's 32 foot wide, and most of the space, most of South Perry Street is 32 foot wide. If you go over to Washington, it's 38 foot wide. Plum is 40 foot wide. South Elm Street is 40 foot wide. Pearl is 40 foot wide until it tapers down. Vehicle width, small compact cars, a parking space, 8 foot is a very narrow parking space. So you take 8 foot times 4 is 32 foot. If it was from the guidelines I've read online, if it was motor vehicles only, then 32 foot would be wide enough. But as she stated, there are semis going up and down the street. I personally have seen several, like she was saying, instances where there's turning difficulties. I was parked in front of the bakery one time in my mom's car behind another vehicle. A semi was coming up from the north. We were unable to get out of the parking space because there wasn't width in that southbound lane to even get out into the parking space because of the semi right up against us. Likewise, there wouldn't have been the width for a vehicle to turn south off of Main Street onto South Perry Street. So I think, and I discussed with Bob Warner, and then he was unfamiliar with this. I went back to Kent Hollenberg, and Kent Hollenberg was a police officer here, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and I discussed the signs with him, and he said that that was when Perfect Circle was busy down there, that there was so much semi-truck traffic going up and down South Perry Street that they had the parking, where there was no parking except for Sundays and holidays on the west side. And then after Perfect Circle closed up, I think the signs disappeared. I don't know if that was the town's doing, the residents doing, or whatever, but parking did start again on South Perry Street. So I think, the way I look at it, there's a couple different things we can do. We can either go back to the no parking on one side, which I agree with what she said. We need as much parking as we can possibly get. We can do that. We can make it one way. I don't like doing that. Or the third option would be to try to establish, which Chris and I discussed, a semi-truck route that would go down Teeter Road to State Road 1. How you establish that and how you enforce that, I really don't know. I've tried to Google that a little bit, but I don't know if you guys want to elaborate on that.
Well, I talked briefly to Rick Wilcox, who is the high school school resource officer who retired from Carnesville Police Department. And if you're familiar with Carnesville, on State Road 1, there is a designated truck route to go around the low railroad overpass on Central Avenue. And about 3 times a month, a semi gets hung up underneath that. And we had discussed, before, trying to discourage semis from going down Washington Street because of the railroad crossing, but you have to have the drivers comply with the signage. So I asked Rick if Carnesville Police Department issues citations for violations of that designated truck route, and he said they used to, but he's been away from Carnesville Police Department now for 7 years. He retired from there. So he's going to look into that for me to see if they do issue citations for that. But I can remember when I came on the police department in 1996, there was a sign posted on the west side of Perry Street, just south of the alley, which would have been in front of the building to the immediate south of the alley, that said, "No parking, cars will be towed." And I always laughed at that because it didn't say anything about trucks or motorcycles, it always said cars. But that was a no parking zone from the alley all the way down to Walnut Street back in 1996. And I think the post might still be there, but that sign long disappeared. So I do think we need to look into it and try to find some middle ground where it's, it's not really causing problems for the residents in that neighborhood, but it's also not causing a traffic problem. What do you guys think?
Chris, if I am correct, to the north of the alley on South Perry, do both sides, there's not a defined curb there, is there? They both slope to the
Yeah.
roadway?
North of the alley, the street's probably 2 or 3 foot wider in front of the bakery than it is in front of her parcel in the apartment house to the north.
Isn't it the same way next to your building, Robin?
Pardon me?
Isn't it the same way next to your building on the east side?
There's been a no parking sign there.
Yeah, but there's no, but part of
There now.
there's part of that curb is, it's not curved, it's kind of like slopes up to the sidewalk. doesn't it?
No, it's curved.
it's
It's
all
curved now because
It's all
that was all
curved.
torn out at some point, yeah.
Okay,
It's all curved.
so
Was there
that,
like a
Now-
15-minute parking zone in front of the bakery?
In front of the bakery.
There was, yeah. But then in front of, beside our building, when we had the curb put in, we left an area for a turn lane when we did that. Whenever it was we did. But I will say, the semi still run anything over on that corner that they,
Yeah.
I had signs destroyed all the time when they would.
And Jackie also mentioned tour buses, and I don't know if it's as prevalent as it used to be, but it used to be a big thing, they'd bring a group of senior citizens in to tour the candy factory.
They still do.
Yeah.
I think NDOT's signs that you push to stop the light, I think those have been ran over on both of the corners
Yeah.
down there, yeah, from semis.
well, didn't they, so they had to move that back, correct? Because didn't they?
I think they got moved it back some from where it was because it was out there pretty far.
One of them got, one on the southeast corner got knocked over not too long ago.
Mhm.
So what is the current legislation on that? I mean, is it, there's no parking, that's in the book, there's no parking there, and then we've done away with it arbitrarily? Is there anything for past practice that overrides that? And if we've been for 20 years without it, now all of a sudden come back and put it in with no notice or anything, or are we, is there any precedent set in that? I mean, if we go 5 years and set a precedence and don't enforce it, the signs are removed, it's not painted yellow, and then all of a sudden one day we come back doing slap yellow on it, put signs up for this.
From a hard, strict legal perspective, I would say no. I mean, you've got the ordinance on the books, it stayed on the books, you went a long time without enforcing it. I mean, from a public relations perspective, I don't think it's a great look.
Right.
You may need to revisit, and then I see that this ordinance was passed in 1985, so it's been a while. So you may need to relook at what's appropriate now and just correct it moving forward. But strictly speaking, legally, I mean, you have this on the books, it's been on the books, there's been no changes. The enforcement has been the issue and the marking. I mean, somebody can make an argument, but I think that's what the ordinance is, and you haven't changed it.
So currently we've painted it yellow.
In front of her house,
In front
but
of my house, but
but not further
north
south.
of the alley has not been painted yet. So people still park there.
And north of the alley, there's no curb being
That's it,
painted.
yeah.
It's just a slope.
Yeah, it'd have to be.
But I think it was at one time.
I mean, there was a line.
Paint a line here, I get it.
And they're pre-existing, not from this, but pre-existing, obviously, from the corner back, that was already yellow, because I've seen in previous pictures, and then there was in front of the building just to the south of the alley, it also had paint, so it was just an extension of that to this. And that,
So is that causing an issue with you at your house?
Well, we have 5 licensed drivers in my home, and we're trying to not take over Abbott's parking, and then he's gonna be upset probably down here. Which granted, it is public parking, but we're trying to be respectful of the businesses and just not overcrowd those. And we usually see a lot of Welliver's people park in front of our house. On the weekends, we usually try to stick to the side, and then when Abbott's is closed, we'll kind of move our cars that way that people from Welliver's can park in front of our house and, not have such a hike to get there, especially with elderly people. but we were just a little confused as to why. My parents have lived on that same corner across Walnut for 25 years. And of course, after the 96, where you said you had seen the signs, but, since this says the west side of Perry Street, should we anticipate all of the south side of the west
I'm
side?
not sure
of
why
south?
just one block got changed. If we're going to enforce that, then it needs to go back to the ordinance. Or we need to change the ordinance.
The only thing I can think of, and I wondered the same thing, the only thing I could think of would be if a semi turns off of 38 and they see another semi coming north, that gives them a chance to pull over somewhere to let other semi pass. That's the only thing I can think of why it would be that way. Which,
Well, and what she's saying is no parking all the way down the one side. That's what the ordinance states. My
Correct.
question is,
Yeah.
when you chose to direct them to paint that, then why didn't you tell them to take it all the way down Perry Street? Just
Brittany is painting curves and she went out and painted it, so yeah.
So I guess, moving forward from here, we have to decide, or chief needs to be involved too. I mean, how do you want that to go forward? Do you want that changed?
We've never had any issues how it was before it was painted. So I would say moving forward, it shouldn't be an issue to
Alter the
keep
ordinance?
it, alter the ordinance to go back to how it's been for the last 20+ years. Like I said, we've never had any issues there, did any enforcement type action there. We've never viewed that as a no parking area there because, again, there's no signage, the curbs haven't been painted, so I wouldn't see any issue with changing the ordinance.
If the ordinance is changed and somebody gets a car sideswiped, that's the risk that you take by parking on the streets. I mean, that.
Yes, and I can say it's not like
It's
we've
not.
been running down there with that type of issue with the cars parked there for the last 15 years I've been here. I don't know that we've ever had an accident there, so there's always that chance, but it's not like I would think that if we change the ordinance to allow it, all of a sudden now we're gonna have a big rash of crashes down there, because it's never been that way before.
Well, basically, we've been operating as if it didn't exist anymore.
Correct, because I never thought it was until they recently painted that, and I noticed it, because it wasn't like that before, and we never viewed it as no parking area.
And my assumption was that at some point, they decided it didn't need to be a no parking zone anymore. Because the sign disappeared and the curb was never painted.
Right.
And there's no record of that being amended.
Not that I've seen.
This is just one part. Obviously, the parking schedule is much bigger. If there would be a way that you could get that out to us, or a way that we could see that might help clarify some of the additional points for us. And then, John, obviously for this, it would require an amendment to things that we could put in work. So we appreciate you bringing this forward, as this is the goal that we have of meetings like this for the public to come forth. And there are many ordinances, as I've seen, that have existed for a while that need updated and looked at. So we appreciate that for now.
This one just, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but it also states that Washington Street from Clay south to the railroad tracks should also be all no parking, except for on the west side, like in front of auto cars. So that's a couple blocks. So it may, if that ends up getting painted based off this ordinance, you may have more people down here.
We will
So
definitely
while you're looking at that,
take a look at that.
While we're on parking, the neighborhoods are at least in one spot, we've got a wide vehicle being parked on the streets again. It's a couple blocks away from Randy Braun's facility down there, which we all know that we've been real lax in allowing that to happen down there. For whatever reason, but we've chosen not to enforce that. There's now semi-trailers parked on Factory Street on a regular basis that no one's doing anything about. It's hard to enforce it on the semi-driver when we're allowing 5 other trucks sitting there and no one's doing it. So basically enforcement on that Factory Street is not being enforced. But what that does is, it makes it difficult for Keith and his guys to go out and enforce it through the neighborhoods if we're not gonna enforce it there. So I briefly discussed with Keith is that we get back into that parking ordinance and that we exempt Factory Street from that wide, only the wide vehicle part of that ordinance. I think it's 72 or 78 inches wide, whatever it is. The width from mirror to mirror of a vehicle is what needs to be measured, and every one of those trucks sitting down there violating that. Has nothing to do with the trailer attached to it. It's the width of the vehicle. That street down there, I didn't measure it, but it is wider than most of the other city streets.
And there's no residents.
And there's no residents.
In that stretch.
So I would look into the possibility of exempting that portion, because it's difficult for him to go out, or his guys to go out and to enforce this 2 blocks up the street when we're allowing it to happen and knowingly allowing it to happen and discussed allowing it to happen on Factory Street. But yet, if you're in a residential neighborhood, and you've got a damn big dump truck sitting in front of your house now, that's a problem. So, it's not just there, but it's some of those trucks are parked elsewhere too. And again, it makes it difficult for Keith to enforce that if you don't enforce it all the way around. So I would encourage Alan, if we get into making the adjustments, that we look into, and that should be an easy amendment to that parking ordinance to exempt.
Right, just to define
That would just
what
be
area.
from Pearl to Washington?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, even maybe part of, I have to talk to Chief about it, because I think that he's got to have input on that if we went across Washington Street
to Perry.
for a half a block. Or
Yeah, 'cause
whatever,
I
Plum
don't
Street.
think we run into another residence until we get to the corner there of, I think it's Perry and Factory is the next residence. Other than that,
I mean,
that
I would
whole
give-
stretch is
I
either
would give it
parking
some
lot
thought
or
on that,
business.
because I think if we're not going to enforce it because of the business, because we're trying to cooperate with the business, and I know that's what our intent is, then we exempt that in writing, so now you can now have a tool back in your box for you that's enforceable.
Any further comments? Next, we have 3 sewer credits for review. You should have all of those in front of you. The first is for 492 Conifer Drive. It's a credit for $48.11. And just for clarification, Julie, as we always ask, if all 3 of these is this the first time for them submitting a
Yes,
refund?
all 3, yep.
You want to do them separately or together?
We can do all, we can do just because there's one for 152 South Plum for $243.38.
And a $48.11, that's right.
And then one more for
5660.
143 West Main for $56.60.
I move that we approve the sewer refunds as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the 3 sewer credits, one for 492 Conifer Drive, one for 152 South Plum, and one for 143 West Main Street. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we have for council action, ordinance number 8, 2026 regarding wage and salary. And this is for the SRO school year 2026, 2027.
What's that salary, chief?
What's that?
What is the salary of the SROs? Approximately.
It's right here.
I think it's, I think it'll now
Who got
be
it?
a lot, 39.5 maybe?
Yeah,
Is that right?
a year.
Yeah.
Are they paid weekly even through
Yes.
the whole year?
Correct.
Okay.
They are, yeah, their salaries broke down over the whole 52 weeks.
And Chief, should we just approved the contract with.
Correct, and it allowed for that $1,000 pay increase for this school year, and then moving forward, we'll evaluate it at the end of every school year prior to the next one. But it was included in the contract we just approved for this upcoming school year.
It's basically just a pass-through, correct?
Correct.
School pays us, we pay them.
Yeah, yes, it's not affecting the money we pay other than
Yeah.
the books.
Yeah.
Correct.
Before voting, then I will need a motion to suspend the rules since we'll have to pass this on the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
From properly moved and seconded that we suspend the rules, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And I will need a motion for ordinance number 8, 2026.
Move we approve ordinance number 8, 2026, wage and salary ordinance as presented.
Second.
You can have that one, Brian.
So properly moved and seconded that we approve ordinance number 8, 2026, wage and salary ordinance as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. And while the rules are suspended, we have ordinance number 9, 2026. This is for the unsafe building fund. John, is this from you or is this?
Well, it's kind of both of us. There was some evidence that the unsafe building fund has been created for a long time, but I don't think it's ever been utilized. And with kind of the council's vision about taking some of these monies from some of these properties and putting that into a fund that we can use to acquire and rehabilitate dilapidated properties, we wanted to make sure that that was set up. So I mentioned that in some of the recitals. There is some evidence that the fund is there, but I don't think it had ever been given a number and that Julie had ever actually, used it. So this is just to formalize that and create that, as I call it, a bucket to hold that money for that purpose.
Anybody wish to review it? I will need a motion for ordinance number 9, 2026.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 9-2026 for the unsafe building fund.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve ordinance number 9, 2026, establishing the unsafe building fund as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Next, we have ordinance number 10, 2026. This was already introduced, and last Monday we had the public hearing for it. So John, if you have anything to speak on this?
Just briefly, so this basically is the outline of the, the council's direction. And then we will put together essentially an exchange agreement that we will turn over to a title company. But this has the kind of the basics in there, and you should have the version I sent out earlier today didn't have the numbers, but I sat down with Chris and got the dates on the appraisal and all of that. So essentially this is the property exchange and then the cash payment coming to the town. We're finding that it's in the town's best interest and why we want to do this. It's fair market value is established by appraisals. Town's authorized to exchange it with the cash payment. Each party will provide a warranty deed to each other. We'll get title, each party will get title insurance, so we know we each have good title to our respective properties. Survey, we could get a survey. I talked to Chris, he doesn't feel like that's necessary on the parcel that we're receiving. Obviously, the other party could request a survey on the parcel that they're receiving if they want, but that would be at their own expense. Environmental, we're essentially accepting without an environmental assessment. Closing costs will be split equally. I said we would close on or before October 15th. I think it'll be well before that, but I didn't want to have to mess with coming back and changing it. And then each party's taking, I don't think there's any improvements on either parcel, but we're taking it as is, where it is, both parties. Alan has some authority to negotiate any final terms or any minor adjustments as needed. And then the cash payment will go to the unsafe building fund, which you just created, along with the money from the sale of North Perry property earlier this month. So I think that's essentially it. Timeline, if you pass this tonight, then I'll put together an exchange agreement. We'll get it to Alan for final review and to the other party for final review. Then once it's signed, we'll turn it over to title company and have them do some searching and make sure that they agree it's insurable title, and then we'll start schedule a closing. So.
Any questions, comments? I want to review the ordinance. If not, I will need a motion then to approve ordinance number 10, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
So properly moved and seconded that we approve ordinance number 10, 2026, authorizing the exchange of properties as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And then just for a first reading this evening, we have ordinance number 11, 2026. This is abolishing the Hagerstown County Court and providing for the transfer of cases, records, and funds.
So, I guess just for some history for anybody that's not up to speed, the Wayne County courts, the prosecutor's office stopped sending citations to the Hagerstown Town Court probably 90 days ago, I'm guessing. I can't remember the exact time frame. But because of that, there's concern, and it does not appear that the court will be sustainable without that influx. They did not want to send a deputy prosecutor out here to cover the hearings. So we're essentially in process of winding down the Hagerstown Town Court through no fault of the court or the council here, but it's just, we have no mechanism to force the prosecutor's office to send business our way, essentially. So we'll take this under a first reading tonight, but this is sort of a process. It does not have a specific date. That was a recommendation because we don't know exactly how long it's going to take to get records transferred, but essentially the business of the Hagerstown Town Court and the records will go to Wayne County and the Wayne County Clerk, and everything will be administered under there. And then, any judgments, things like that, would also be documented and tracked moving forward over there. Question came up last meeting about funds. So funds that have been allocated to the town will work between now and the time we actually would wind things down. But there are some notices we have to give to judicial administration and the Wayne County Clerk and all that. But we're gonna have some time, but we'll figure out if there are things, if there's money that we're at risk of losing as the town, that we in good conscience try to spend things that we can utilize after the court is actually closed. I have not spoken with Judge Bell or anyone, so I don't know whose role that will be, but this is just a first reading, but we need to make sure that we're transparent and no surprises. I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone because, again, we can't be sustainable without that business from the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. So.
Just as a point of interest, as a follow-up, because that position is an elected position, does that have to go, how does it dissolve? Is that just the clerk of court, the clerk says it can't exist anymore, or is there a process to that?
And I need to see what's going to happen with that salary and those funds because it is an elected position. So that's, I guess I would say, to be determined, but that's high on my list of how that's going to play out because I don't know if that's going to go away and she's not going to have a salary, or if the office, a state agency will continue to pay her until her term is up. I will explore that.
She has 2 more years on her term, correct?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Is there anything in that ordinance? I thought we looked at something in there that indicated that. If you abolish the office, it's not there. It's created by us by ordinance, and we do away with it by ordinance. Then why is there any pretense that needs to be carried on after the abolishment of it?
As far as salaries?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that there is.
Okay.
I'm saying I'm not sure, and I'm not sure because it's an elected position and it's a judicial, essentially position, post, if she has any benefit or anything through the Office of Judicial Administration, because that's one of the agencies we have to notify. So I don't know if she has an option to go be a commissioner or something at Wayne County and keep her salary. Those are things I'm not sure about.
So do we notarize the judicial committee, and then is it their responsibility to notify her what we're doing, or?
Well, I mean, I think we need to communicate with her in good conscience because we're obviously doing this. We have to notify the Office of Judicial Administration, the Secretary of State, the Clerk of Wayne County, and the presiding judges of Wayne County that this is happening. And we'll work on that once the ordinance is passed. And then we will all essentially work together to figure out how that's going to play out, and when records are going to transfer, when the court officially stops doing business and things go over there. Because you got to think about all these parties that are parties to these cases, some of which may have been in place for a while, like through a deferral or diversion program. They have to be notified what they're going to need to do, and all these records have to be preserved. So this is kicking the ball off. This is not getting it across the goal line.
Any further questions? If not, concluding council action, we move to town attorney. We've already dealt with 65 West Main, 51 South Perry. Unless there's anything there, but what regarding 198 North Perry.
No, you have the money, and that's part of the reason we created the Unsafe Building Fund. So that money from that sale will go into that, along with this pending sale. So we're moving forward on that. Insurance counsel did appear in the case for the slip and fall out front. So they will be running point on that defense of that lawsuit. So I did confirm that, so I won't have to do anything there. The pole attachment agreement, I've not heard anything from.
We still have not received an existing pole attachment count, which is what we're waiting on.
The railroad situation, I don't think Chris hasn't heard anything from them. However, if, we talked about putting on another inch or two of asphalt, and that might solve the problem now, because you don't, at least in your opinion, it doesn't appear that siding is usable.
Correct.
So if we were able to put that, another inch or two of asphalt to flatten that grade, there is some state law protection, specific statutes, and I think we've talked about this before, but I didn't feel comfortable with this process if we were talking about a $400,000+ change to that crossing, drainage, interrupting train traffic, all that. That was not in the cards. But if we're talking about putting on a little bit more asphalt, says this is Indiana Code 86121. It says each railroad company whose road or tracks line any public street, road, or alley in any city, town, or county shall properly grade, plant, gravel, or asphalt the road and tracks in accordance with the grade and surfacing material of the public street, road, or alley in such a manner as to afford security for life and property of persons and vehicles using public streets, roads, or alleys. If the railroad company fails to comply, the town may, after 30 days written notice to the superintendent or regional engineer, do the work and either recover the amount in a suit filed in a court of competent jurisdiction in any city, town, or county and may collect reasonable attorney's fees. Or you can certify the amount to the county auditor, who would prepare a special tax duplicate to be collected and settled for the county treasurer in the same manner that property taxes are collected. So essentially an attachment to the real estate that the railroad owns as an additional cost. So I guess what I would propose, that Chris now kind of has at least some dialogue with the Federal Railroad Administration, that we point this out and say it's our intent that we're going to slap down another few inches of asphalt and make this passable. We may cover up the spur, but it looks like you already have. We're not going to interrupt traffic on the main line. So that would be, I feel comfortable doing that.
Do they have to get permission? Do they have so much easement?
Well, they have noted, they would have, this is after 30 days written notice that that's what we want to do. So they could go do it themselves, but if they don't do it, then it appears that we have the right to do it to maintain our traffic flow. So I think it's worth firing a shot across the bow. And I don't know what it would cost. I mean, I don't know if that's a $10,000 job.
Probably not. I'm guessing like 3,000, somewhere around there. 2,500, 3,000, probably not a whole lot.
And if you feel like a couple inches of asphalt would significantly help that crossing, if we can cover up that spur and just kind of, we can give them notice, through that mediator process and directed by statute and see what they say. That might get them off center, I don't know.
You do that on both sides then?
It just really needs on the north side, I believe. Because I've really looked at the marks of how the trailers have scraped or are still scraping down there, and I think it's caused on, it's both, the scraping both directions is caused by the north side, from what I can tell. The north side being too low.
So I guess if you can give me just kind of a rough, you want 2 inches of asphalt from, a foot away from the main rail on the main line down covering the, that's 20 feet or whatever of 2 inches of asphalt, and you think that'll help?
Yeah, I can go down there, spray paint, make marks, and then measure it out and get it to you, and we'll,
So, But like I said, at least try to keep the discussion going, see if we can get a little better relief.
We just said it first, we didn't have to. Got it. Anything further?
I think that's all I have.
But we start monkeying with that down there, and it doesn't fix the problem. Where's the end in sight on that? I mean, we go down like 2 inches down and it doesn't, we're still dragging and front ends are still hitting that down there. Are we going to go put 5 inches down and take it 25 feet back from the tracks? I mean, we need to make sure before we open that can of worms that's going, 2 inches doesn't sound like enough, but you looked at it a lot harder than I have.
if you look at the depth of the scrapes and the length of the scrapes, to me, it looks like it doesn't need to go up a whole lot.
Yeah. It looks like some of the cars are hitting with their front ends.
Probably are.
It's not just trailers hitting it, it's their front end of the, like,
That's
A-frame
probably
underneath the
speed
car.
related more than anything
Probably.
with the cars.
And then Kramer Engineering looked at that last year.
Correct.
Did they ever draw up any drawings or anything, or just give any recommendations?
They have tons of recommendations, but then it becomes, we're still within the railroads, behind the gates, yeah, so, yeah.
Next, we will have liaison reports, Parks and Recreation.
Meeting next Monday.
Police Department. Keith?
Just a couple things, like she said, Jubilee Day weekend, went really well, had a great crowd, and just a couple little minor parking related calls, stuff, which is common, but with the amount of people that was here, the amount of area in town that was being occupied by it, I was very happy with how everything went. We had no issues. A couple times had to work with the support staff on the Jubilee side. They were helpful and we took care of all the issues. So that was a very good experience. I was told for the third year in a row that next year we're going to have to resubmit the permit instead of getting it extended, but if so, I'll do it. But I'm going to try for an extension again next year and see what they say. I did have the meeting with the director from Recovery Works, and I thought it was a very productive meeting. Worked out a lot of the issues. It's not going to affect the call volume, but I think it's going to positively affect how the calls go and the interaction between first responders, staff, etc. It was a very helpful meeting on our side, and I think also on theirs, because now he's aware of some of the concerns and issues we've been running into that he can address now with their staff. So I thought it was a very good meeting. I learned a little bit about the operation, how things are going down there. A lot of it is, rumor mill is not accurate unless, based on what I was told. So I thought that was a good meeting. And then the only other thing is I sent you our call report. We were down one call from the previous month, so that's a positive also. We had 232 calls for service in July. So other than that, that's all that I had.
Thank you. Fire Department. Rick?
July was another busy month for the department. We helped out down at the fireworks on the 4th, and then up here we helped out with the Jubilee days with the parade and the fireworks up there and whatever they needed from us, we helped them with. So we finished the runs with 27 calls, 2 down from last month. We had seen a large increase in motor vehicle accidents. We responded to 9 vehicle accidents, 1 including a fatality. With 12 EMS calls. Structure fire calls were down. So, other than that, all of the other alarms or calls were down with those there. But for some reason this year, motor vehicle accidents have been up. Membership, we're down a few people, but we've got 4 interested in coming on. 3 of them already have their certifications. 1 has a certification in EMS, but the others have their Fire 1, Fire 2, and so we want to be moving into town shortly. So we're going to look at putting them on, and they are all either retired from another department or still in another department, and want to be. They live here in the community, so they want to join up. So apparatus at 6-1, we had to replace the batteries on that. They were $500, but that's not much for those batteries there. It takes 3 for the engine. So other than that, still work on the station. We paint. Well, we whitewashed it. Some people don't like it. Some people do. So I've had some people that told me they liked it. Some didn't like it. So we're going to live with it now. So we still got to get the front bay doors painted and do some more things to it. So that's it.
Airport board, huh?
Not a lot this month. We did reach an agreement with the flying club from Knowltown to use the 4-H building. So I'll get with John about a lease. That's all I've got.
There's a fly-in.
There's a pancake breakfast this Saturday.
Advisory Plan Commission.
Yes, we had a meeting, and one of the things that we've asked Tom to do is kind of look at some of the ordinances that he's responsible for that is kind of outdated. He actually brought, we talked about it for a couple meetings. He actually brought the packets that I'd given out on you and John. Plan Commission went through it. It's basically on chapter 92 on defining junk, rubbish, and waste material. That was pretty big, general, and not very defined, and couldn't really be controlled. And so we kind of, the definitions, we worked through those, and then the 92 or 92.02, the accumulation of that, you'll see that that's been reworded. And then the 92.99, the penalty to that, so that there would be a little bit of, be able to put a little bit of a bite into that ordinance. And I believe that this ordinance is pretty well, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this ordinance is pretty well monitored by Tom, I believe, on this one.
On the rubbish,
Yeah.
it is since he's come on board. Before we handled it, but he's been kind of at the front since.
Yeah, I thought so. So it might talk about grass in here too. Of course, that comes, I think Tom turns that in to Julie, and then Julie sends out the letter. So he's kind of headed that up too. And then, and as I go into the grass and the noxious weeds and things like that, if you go to 99.01, the definitions of that, how that is kind of defined. You know, we get people complaining about the noxious weeds that their neighbors have and how it affects them, and there's just not really, hasn't been defined very well, so we try to define it a little bit better and where it can be and where it can't be. And then that's where you'll see in 99.02, the restriction areas from that. And then he wants that the wiring code, which has been, I'll try to just summarize this, has been a big issue, electric wiring. Our code was greater than the state, was greater than the state code. So our requirements were higher than the state code, which you can do that. But it really upsets the electricians and the people working in the area. He doesn't see any reason that the state code is not adequate and fine. So he would like to delete the residential wiring code at 51.110 through 51.112, and that's the area where our requirements are higher than the state. So what will happen is that the town will follow the state codes on the electrical wiring. We'll be in unison, and he thinks that just does away with a lot of confusion. And then the 51.123 authority in there. So he's really the Plan Commission's looked this over. We're really fine with this, but it's ultimately up to Town Council to approve it. And we figured that probably Town Council would want John to look it over. We're not attorneys by any means. John might want to critique it a little bit. Basically bringing it to Town Council to make you aware that these are the recommended changes that the Plan Commission would like to look at this in these codes.
I got a question on the penalties. Under Section A, it says finding the amount not less than $100, no more than $2,500. So is it arbitrarily, somebody's just gonna say, oh, we're gonna fine $200 this week, or we're gonna fine $100 next week? I mean, where are we?
Tom really leans towards a smaller number. He normally
But this isn't written for Tom, this is written for the town, so we need to understand if Tom's not here, we better define how we're gonna find this.
Well, then, I don't know.
I'm just asking if you're going to.
I don't know how you define that. So if it's got too many thistles, it's $250. If it's 9 thistles, it's $100. I mean, I don't know exactly how you're going to do that. Tom's deal is normally, Julie, you correct me, but Tom says normally when he contacts somebody about the problem and says, I would like to give you some time to correct this, he will say 90% of the time or greater, it's just addressed and it doesn't go any farther. He normally, if he has to go back, he normally leans, and I don't know how you do this, he normally leans to the smaller number. It's not like we're trying to get rich at this thing, but sometimes, especially people that are not in-town residents that own that property, sometimes they're the ones that just ignore it and let it go on, and sometimes it gives us the opportunity to get more of their attention. So I don't know how to do that.
We've got the prolific offenders on Madison Street, or Clay Street down there. That's nothing.
That's one that's been brought, he brought a lot of pictures. We have those issues in town, but we've really never had an ordinance that he could take out and say, this is what our ordinance looks like, this is why you're out of this ordinance. It was too broad, not enough description. This will hopefully bring it in. We have a lot of ordinances where, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a lot of ordinances where it has a span of the fine.
We have several that apply to us, and generally the way we've done that is we start at the very bottom, first time offense. If we have a repeat issue, we double the first time when it progressively based on repeat is how we've done ours.
And I think Tom's thinking very well. Tom hopes that he doesn't have to even use the fine. He's just hoping that he makes them aware, shows them a good ordinance. This is why you have to do it. And he says most times people just correct it.
Yeah, 100% agree with that, except the fact that you've got a $100 to a $2,500 span.
It's pretty broad.
It should be defined. If you get a $100 ticket this time, the second time it's this much, third time it's this much, and then you max out to the $2,500.
We would leave that up to John how he wants to work that.
So I would suggest, I just looked at the golf cart ordinance for the chief, and I've seen your ordinances say a first offense is X, second offense, and then a third and every subsequent offense. So you might say $100 for the first, $250 for the second, and maybe say if the second offense is within a year of the first one, so if they're not mowing their yard and they let it go, then they're gonna start to feel the pinch of, okay, now you're gonna pay $250 instead of $100, and then if there's a third offense, it'd be maybe $500 or maybe it's $1,000.
We'll leave that up to the attorney to decide. John,
We can pick the numbers, but that's the structure I would use, because I don't think it's fair to the residents to have Tom or whoever have the authority to go from, what do we say, 100 to 2,500?
It's 2,500.
Well, I'm mad at you, I don't like you, it's 2,500, and well, you're nice.
Or if we change,
100.
or if we change building inspectors, the
Right.
next person that comes along needs to
Right.
have a defined
Yeah,
guideline.
that person may have a whole different, slant, and people may be like, well, wait a minute, Tom only did this much, or Tom did twice as much, why are you only doing that?
I think it's good to have something progressive though, because right now with the weed violation, we have some landlords that are like, oh wow, okay, we'll just wait around and
It's
get.
cheaper to pay the fine than actually to send somebody out and mow it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was the next question is, and then if that's the case, then why are we starting at just $100? If you contract, or you pay the guys to go out to mow, if you contract somebody, an outside source to go clean up this property.
Yeah.
Well, some of them are more not that big of a deal, and some of them are smaller. I think right now the thing we don't like about the grass thing is basically we're just recovering our costs, right?
Correct, we're just billing time and materials.
So it's not even the $100.
So that's my point. You started at $100, you're wasting time and money because it's gonna cost more.
We just brought it, so if you would like to see, we just brought it.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a couple yards are absolutely covered in dog feces, some are covered with,
The dead dog across from my house, Bernie Taylor's old house, they found it literally some dead dog.
some of our employees have had fleas and ticks when they've returned from mowing. I mean, it's, yeah.
I think.
It doesn't matter to us, we're just bringing it to council.
I think you need to look at the fines to make them more steep, but I don't know that that's the attorney's job, that's our
Well,
job.
give him a direction. This is just what we recommend, we just recommend it, we don't vote
And then
on it.
conviction, the ticket, the violation is cited. We go through the whole process here, however long that's gonna take, 60 to 90 days to run that through here. Then up one conviction, the penalty starts day per day after the conviction as a separate offense.
Well, and this is only a portion, I'm sure it might exist somewhere else, because this is only a portion of the.
Right.
of
Yeah,
the
but
provision.
section
So-
B, it says each and every day the violation continues shall be taken as a separate offense.
Oh, but that's
Up one
under,
conviction.
that's under two different, that's under ordinances that aren't
Yeah, that's
listed
it.
here. That's 9204 and 9205.
So you would have to
So
go
we'll have
look,
to take a look at the
you'd have
entirety
to
of the
look,
ordinances.
yeah, you'd have to look at those ordinances and pull up. Because the other one is under 02, 03, 11,
Where it's on the
12.
front.
Yeah, which is on the 12, on the front.
Yeah.
Because that might be pre-existing within the ordinances already that says what a conviction is or what a.
Definitely need this, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I was thinking maybe the fines.
We just brought it for, sometimes when we seem to set numbers too high, we get in trouble for too high, and we think they're too high, and we want to lower them, so we get mixed signals exactly what is right or what is wrong, but ultimately, town council makes the final decision. This is just what we felt comfortable bringing, and we talked about it for probably 2 or 3 meetings, and asked Tom to go back and look at it. So he brought, I think, pictures from 9 different properties, at least 9 different properties that would be in violation of this, that right now, the way it states, it's really hard for Tom to go out and really do anything because it's so vague. But if we put this in place, then he could address those.
100% agree, we need it, that's for sure.
And that's all we had from Planning Commission.
Town manager report. Chris?
Alrighty, at our wastewater treatment plant, Bob Warner is still working on engineering of permanent catwalks, and he hopes to have those drawings done sometime in October to bid out. We had a significant amount of rainfall Saturday after the Jubilee Days festivities. It was crazy. I'll let Crystal talk about it a little bit more. We had 2 backups and basements on South Elm Street just because our system was filled to and beyond capacity. I think I brought up at the July meeting that Crystal's been talking to Richmond Sanitation about developing a better protocol for our sewage backups issues we have with the sewage treatment. I'm going to just let her discuss that a little bit. She's done an excellent job of putting together a document here that I think will cover the bases and get us all on the same page. I mean, anyone who works with the sewage department, even whoever answers the phone, we all need to be on the same page. So Crystal, do you want to discuss that a little bit?
I couldn't find anything in any of our documentation that we have an actual policy and procedure that we followed in the case that we get a call come in that somebody has a backup or a problem. Even though when we get a call, Matthias and I go through the same procedure every time. We check the manhole to north of the property, south of the property, however it falls. We make sure those are open and flowing. If they're open and flowing, then that indicates that that issue is not an on-us issue. Our main is open and flowing. This just basically outlines that. It goes through step by step. It walks you through it. In the event that we find it, what happens. If our manholes are plugged, what happens. There's even a work order sheet that the girls can initiate in office. That will come to us. We'll put the corresponding upstream, downstream manhole numbers on here. These will be stored and saved at the plant for item records. When she comes in, there's initial findings on here. If in the event it is item reportable event, it's checked yes or no. And then obviously I would have to do paperwork if it is, and fill those reports out and send those in. And then Matthias and I will both sign off on it that we've seen it. But that way everybody who answers the phone or takes a call out, all you have to do is pull this out and you know exactly what you're doing. I felt like this would take some of the gray area out of things. There's tends to be confusion. If we go and check something and it's open and then they're calling and complaining in here and acts like we've not checked and done our due diligence. So they now have a black and white document that we follow, and this is the procedure that we follow every time. There's no varying from this. So I felt like it needed to be documented somewhere. I don't know if it needs to go in an ordinance or I don't know, but I felt like we needed something on hand.
This just seems procedural, so I would
Yes.
do that.
One thing that we've brought up before, and we've had issues here, it's funny because it seems like we've had more issues in the last 2 years than the last 12 years, but overall. But people are not installing backflow preventers on their sewers, and we are having a lot of, I won't say a lot, we're having basements get backed up. I've talked to my insurance guy, Crystal, and I've talked acts of God, like the high water this past weekend. That should be the responsibility of the homeowner to be cleaning that up. We don't have any kind of anything in our ordinances that we're able to lean on when we're getting yelled at, people freaking out about their basements being flooded. I would like to have an ordinance that we could actually point to and say, this is our ordinance, we're not covering this, you need to have the proper insurance that covers your house being flooded by sewage lines, you know.
Could you maybe look at other communities around us
Yeah.
that might have
Mhm.
an ordinance like that in place?
That's
That would
where
give us
this
a,
came from.
that might
This
give
went
us
off
a
of
starting
Richmond's.
point.
Yeah.
This was basically their procedural document. I
So
used
is
as
this
a
an ordinance
template
or
for
this,
this. This is just a procedure,
So if you're gonna,
so that there's no question.
if we're not gonna be in the responsibility, would that have to be an ordinance or can it just?
Well, we're having to start looking to see if there are other communities that
I
have.
think homeowners don't realize they're responsible for their own lateral.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's
if it's
true.
got a root
That's what I
ball
experienced.
at the very end of their tap where it protrudes into our main, it's still their lateral,
Right.
and the homeowner is responsible for that.
And even if a backup occurs, according to my insurance guy, they're supposed to have, it's an insurance rider for backflow into their basements that they're supposed to have. So it costs $25 to $500 additional a year for that policy.
And what was it you said? I think you gave, I think you and I were talking a quote for a backflow device.
Probably, I think Kathy Sager said, I think hers is $3,500. Does that sound right, Crystal?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it's
Multiplied by
3,500.
about 2.5.
Was it really? Is that what you were told on yours? It probably varies from site to site too,
It
depending
was gonna
on.
be around 10,000.
Was it really for yours? So depending on the depth and the location and, you know, that kind of thing. I'm
So
sure.
it very well might be cost prohibitive for a lot of people to do that.
Yeah.
But the backup insurance would not be as cost prohibitive, you know, 50, depending on what kind of coverage you have.
And Newcastle requires some sort of a backflow device, but I don't know if that's sewage or what kind of thing, but they require it.
You know, I looked at our code and part of it I think somehow might be mixed up with water and wastewater when I looked at that particular section. But it says that backflow devices on any facility that handles hazardous materials, I think I've got below me here, but it was like funeral homes and industrial. I mean, there were just certain things that required at medical facilities. Yeah. Okay, so let me go on down through my list. Water department, we are 100% finished with the, well, besides, I shouldn't say 100%, Mike Kleinpeter extended our water line project deadlines of Oak Ridge just to make sure we get fully reimbursed for all of our expenses. I think we still have a little bit that we need to be reimbursed for. We've had some smaller water leaks. We had that one on South Elm Street, which was a 2-inch water line, which are extremely difficult to find because you don't have the pressure as like an 8-inch water line, but that is resolved now. We ordered 100 new water meters from Utility Supply. Hopefully we can get that wrapped up. We were down and then we had more quit working. So I've been continuing to work on our lead service line inventory. There's a lot of different parts to that to work through. Electric department's been working for getting ready for Jubilee Days, assisting other departments. Streets department, street sweeping. We had a lot of complaints, a lot of compliments rather. I'm used to complaints. Compliments through Jubilee Days about how nice the town looked in the streets in particular. Community crossings grant. I keep putting that on here. September 1st is when it will be called out, so I'm going to be getting back on that. Summer students helping, painting weeds, that kind of thing. We're keeping CJ Gwynn for a work-based learning program, and he'll be with us for at least the first semester from high school. So we're looking forward to that. Other stuff, employee handbook, job descriptions, we need the final review and approval on those still. I worked on the Jubilee Days Planning Committee, as several other people have mentioned. It was very successful this year. I attended our sister cities founder Mike Kiefer's surprise 75th birthday in Hagerstown, Maryland. We were able to attend a Hagerstown Flying Boxcars baseball game in their new stadium, which was a really cool experience. Got to have a kind of behind the scenes tour of that. I'd highly recommend visiting them sometime. And that was with the former Mayor Takesha Martinez and her family. Visited Brooks' house, coffee and chocolate. You got chocolates on your table from that. Dylan had been out there, Julie had been out there with us before. Hagerstown, Maryland has a drug rehab facility for women. It's called Brooks House, and it's program that was started from a guy by the name of Kevin Simmers, I believe was his name, and his daughter Brooke died from a drug overdose. And Kevin was a veteran narcotics cop in Hagerstown, Maryland. He took us for a tour of that facility. They have a beauty shop in the facility, and then they also have a restaurant where they have sandwiches, coffee, chocolates. Very neat place to visit, a very successful drug rehab program for ladies. They have and Julia would probably remember this from when we were there. They have a wall full of all the girls that they've helped in treatment, and the last time I was there, I think it's about, we got there 2 or 3 years ago. And they probably helped 3 times that many girls since then. It's just a really neat thing to see. So if you're ever out in Hagerstown, Maryland, those are some neat things to visit. Trying to see if there's anything else. The only other thing down here, got a Miller pipeline cleared up the dump at the airport with a bulldozer. That was kind of a mess down there. We've got the gate closed again. We're trying to keep people out of there. Other than that, working with the trip and fall lawsuit we've got going. You guys have any questions? All right.
Julie, anything from your desk? Any further? Next regular council meeting will be Tuesday, September 8th. As Labor Day falls on the Monday at 6:30 p.m. Everybody had a chance to review the claims as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second.
So properly moved and seconded that we approve the claims as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
We had our first parade entrance for Hagerstown, Maryland this year. Scott was for
Oh, yeah.
2000, no, 1804 Moses. And then we got another one that says, I'm sorry, we'll be attending. I thought it was Hagerstown.
That's fun.
Treatment operator.
So you use that for
I'll get it.
Oh, yeah.